the methane of the Brazilian cattle. Good afternoon. What an intense day. Lots of lectures, lots of talks. I'd like to thank Canal and congratulate. It's a big pleasure to be here today. So I have to talk about the reduction of methane. It's a complex topic. We have to understand a little bit more about methane, and we have been working very hard on this topic in our Animal Science Institute with a lot of research in São Paulo. It's an institution which is 119 years old, working actively with agriculture. So we are trying to understand a little bit more about methane and also in the tropical areas. The first thing we have to understand is what is this molecule of methane that we so much discussed. We call it natural gas. It's very simple. It's one atom of carbon and 4 atoms of hydrogen, but it has a great potential. It warms 20 times more than the carbon molecule. So we have to understand and we have to work mainly in the tropical regions. How is it formed? It's basically formed of the decomposition of raw matter, mainly when there is very little oxygen. So pastures is the perfect environment. It's formed in this environment to remove the molecule hydrogen, and when we remove it, we make it so it turns out in a defense. It's a reaction, a biochemical reaction, so that the other reactions can happen, so that the bacteria in the environment can develop. Once we feed the bacteria and not the animals. So we can find in the digestive process, in the animal waste, and also in the rice crops. How is it distributed? Globally distributed, these methane emissions, how are they distributed? This is a new picture. It has been published very recently. In the last week, it has been going around in the social media, mainly in LinkedIn. I want to show you that apart from everything that we have said, besides everything we know, cattle farming is responsible for 15% of what is emitted, of all the methane which is emitted in the world. We bring this to Brazil. Our energy metrics is very clean. So we have, our participation is a little bit bigger. We participate with 17%. So who is emitting more methane, enteric methane? So is the beef cattle. 69% of the emission comes from the enteric part, 80% from waste, and a little bit of nitrous. So of course they are more balanced because of the diet of our dairy cattle, and the amount of protein is a little bit bigger on this diet. And then there's something. What causes it? Is the cattle's fart or burp? So we have to identify. 95% of what is emitted comes from their burp. It comes from the fermentation process. So that we can remove this hydrogen. So when we supply a good diet with lots of fibers to these animals, of course we have more methane emissions. So we have opportunities. We can work changing these rules, changing the biochemical reactions, and changing the productions of the acids. So we can change all that is produced. That is a difference, a big difference that we have to understand. We have the methane, the fossil methane, and biogenic. The fossil one is what is the one that we need to be concerned the most because it's the one that comes from natural gas and it lasts for thousands of years in the atmosphere because of these reactions. And this return, this cycle takes longer. So we have a great incidence of fire. I mean, because of the CO2 that has been emitted, it's going to be in the atmosphere for a long time. And we have to understand that the accumulation of gases, greenhouse gases, makes that the incidence of the solar rays go through and there is no refraction. That's why we are feeling the heat. It's so much hotter these days. And the biogenic has a short cycle. The half-life of this methane that is emitted by the cattle is about 8.6 years, from 8 to 12 years. The animal burps, it goes through the fermentation process, and this methane returns to the production, to the forage, to the crops, as CO2, like the photosynthesis process. There is an accumulation or a sequestration of this CO2, but it's an upcycling. This is very important. We have to start thinking about it. So it's nothing more than a loss of energy. From 2 to 12% of everything that is consumed is lost. So we are not producing beef. We are stop producing milk. So we have strategies to modify that. What's the biggest challenge? First is to reduce the hydrogen production. It's formed to remove the hydrogen. The second is to facilitate the ways of use of hydrogen. We have new ways of doing this. And the third is to inhibit directly the metagenesis. What can we do? First, increase our production. We have to intensify our production. This is the main thing that we have to do so that we can reduce these emissions. How can we increase it? Sanity, genetical improvement, animal welfare. That's everything that we have discussed during the day. Of course, we are going to decrease the number of animals for that amount of beef that we are going to produce. And we are going to make use of more animal food with more energy, decreasing the emissions per animal. Something that is very important, and I like to pinpoint, we have to decrease the emissions of the equivalents, CO2 equivalents per kilo of produce. That's important. So we are going to increase production and decrease the emissions per kilo. This is a classical work analysis that have been doing the last few years of research in Brazil. And what it says is there are some strategies. First, genetical improvement. Second, manipulation of diet. And the third, the manipulation of ruminal manipulation. So all this can help to reduce 36% of the methane emissions. Using better animals, more efficient, the low consumption. If you work with genetics, you know what I'm talking about. So the animal eats less to get the same amount. We improve the diet, the quality of forage, increase the level of protein, work with additives, change with manipulation of this fermentation. This is very important and is one of the things that reduce the carbon emissions. So you have an idea of how much we can reduce if we change these strategies, if we make use of these strategies. So if we work with the genetics, we can reduce 38%, and the productivity will increase 99%. Rotational pasture, we can decrease 22%, and it increases 22%. If we have more protein in their diet, so we are going to decrease 10% and 12%. And if we increase the food, it increases a lot as well. So the increase of efficiency so that we can decrease the emissions, and in this the same way in decreasing the impacts. So what have we been doing? So along with other companies, we have a partnership, public and private. So we have created a neutral pack, which is a center of climatic neutrality in the tropical areas, so that we can the equations tropicalized. We need to have this partnership.
Our partners are JBS, again, with CAPESP, the university. We hope our other partner returns. And these other partners are the ones we have projects with, the private initiative. There is no research without the partnership, public and private partnership. And Brazil needs to understand that. Minister, we cannot think that the government is going to keep funding the researches. We need to make private-public partnerships to be more assertive. So this is our research center in São José do Rio Preto. What do we need to do? Pasture management, production efficiency, intensification of cattle raising production, knowledge of the emissions, especially capture in well-managed pastures, and we need to have a leadership in this sector. We are in waiting for this leadership. I still believe that we can manage to get that. Who is